In the beginning of my business, I didn't know how to sell. I ended up with 54 no's in a row. I was sued by American Express with a 6-week-old baby in my arms. I'm going to get through. This isn't going to hold me back.
I worked with a woman who said that every time she had some money problems, she will book the most luxurious vacation, and then the money came as soon as she did that. How do you think frequency-wise we change this? Because there are the beliefs, right? Our limiting beliefs. So how do you go into those and change those?
If you believe that everyone has the money for the thing that you're selling, that will change everything for you. You don't think you have the money right now. Do you want to talk about finding the money? Do you want me to help you find the money?
What do you think comes first, the mindset or the action?
One of the fastest ways to get yourself out of your head is to take that action. Probably not going to feel 100% ready when you take the action. You're never going to feel 100% ready. You just have to go and try it.
Hi, and welcome to the show. This is Orion. Thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in changing your money mindset, in changing your identity and your story around money, this is the show for you. Today I have with me Emily Williams. She is a success coach, author, podcast host, and CEO of multiple brands who has worked with thousands of ambitious, heart-centered women all over the world in helping them bust through the obstacles that holds their dreams and goals hostage so they can break free and free themselves to create a life that's better than their dreams. She is the host of the I Heart My Life show podcast and the author of the book I Heart My Life, Discover Your Purpose, Transform Your Mindset, and Create Success Beyond Your Dreams. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Emily. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Before we begin, maybe you can share with me one beautiful childhood memory.
Oh, goodness. The first thing that came to mind was my grandparents had a house in Florida. And so every spring break, we used to go there with them and just, go to the beach. And we had it was normally over Easter. And so we'd have an Easter egg hunt and Easter brunch. And I just remember it being a really special time. And I'm just grateful that my parents, they traveled with us a lot, even from when we were really young. So having those experiences of getting out of where I'm from, I feel like it really opened my eyes to other places, even though it was just Florida. It was something that always stuck with me.
Yeah, and it seems like getting out of where you're from is the theme of your life, metaphorically, right?
Yeah, you're right. It is. Although I've come full circle and come back, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Oh, well, tell me all about it.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ohio in the US, and it's one of those places people kind of call it the boomerang state because people leave, but then they come back because it is a really amazing place to grow up in the sense that the people are really incredible and nice. It's very grounding. But I always wanted to leave. I always wanted to go somewhere else. And I was planning to go to Chicago for grad school and get my master's in counseling psychology. But literally, as I was driving there, I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach like this was not the right next step for me. And so my mom was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and she saw that I was crying. And we ultimately ended up turning the car around and going back to Ohio. And at that point, again, I still wanted to leave, but I didn't have any clarity around what I wanted to do. And so I kind of entered into a major quarter life crisis and had to move back in with my parents. I worked at Starbucks for a while and just didn't have any direction. It wasn't until a few months later when I went to visit my sister who was studying abroad that I landed in London in England and stepped out of Victoria Station and was just like, it hit me. I was meant to live in London. And again, it's not something that I'd ever planned. And it's not something that people from my hometown normally do. No one in my family has moved to another country, but I just felt like I was meant to be in that place. And so I figured out a way to get there. I applied for a student visa for a nonfiction writing program because I thought, well, I'll write a book. I've always wanted to write a book. And I moved there 15 years ago, didn't know anyone, didn't have a place to live. Literally, the only plan I had was that I was going to go to grad school. And I just started my life there. And a year after that, I ended up meeting my husband online and everything started to unfold and fall into place a little bit more. But like I said, I went through that period of a good 2 years of just being really depressed, uncertain, not sure about what I wanted to do with my life, but still having this feeling like I was meant for something big.
So what was it like? Were you struggling when you just arrived there, being alone?
Yeah, so I lived in a hotel for a few days and then ultimately realized it was going to take longer for me to find an apartment and I didn't want to run out of money, so I moved into a hostel. And well, I found those pictures recently and my room was actually a disabled room and so it kind of looked like a hospital room as well. And so because the bathroom was quite big, I put all my suitcases in the bathroom and was just like I can't believe I did it, to be honest with you. And I eventually found an apartment that was a few tube stops, about 15 minutes away from where I was staying. And I, again, didn't have any money. And so I decided I was going to lug all of my suitcases across town myself and up 4 flights of stairs to my new studio apartment. And I remember just arriving in like a pool of sweat, but being like, I did it. I'm here. And I got a job as a nanny part time. And so luckily it was for this amazing American family and they kind of took me under their wing and were so lovely. Their son was actually ended up being the ring bearer at my wedding and we've stayed in touch all these years. And it was just a crazy time. And like I said, I met my husband online a year later because I ultimately decided to throw myself into the world of online dating because I didn't know how to make friends. I didn't know how to like go up to other women in bars or wherever I was going to try and be like, will you be my friend? I didn't know how to do that. I didn't feel comfortable with that. But for whatever reason, I felt comfortable doing the online dating thing. And so luckily meeting my husband, that really opened up a lot of doors and I was able to, befriend his friends and have somewhat of a social life. But it was definitely interesting and now having a daughter myself, thinking about her doing that at 24 years old, it's so nerve-wracking and I again have a lot of admiration for myself and kind of feel like I can't believe my parents were okay with that. If they weren't, they never told me. But yeah, it was a big deal and I just kind of figured it out as I went along.
That's amazing. It kind of reminds me of my own story where I arrived to New York City when I was, I think, 25, 26, and I schlepped my suitcases into, my little studio apartment on the fourth floor on 72nd and no, 74th and 2nd in Manhattan. So I get it. And yeah, my goodness, those first 2 years were super hard for me too. So wow, incredible.
Did you have a hard time making friends?
Not really, because I went into an acting school, so I was already immersed in like I had friends there, but actually with all those friends I still felt pretty lonely. It takes a while to actually know people deeply and all that.
Yeah, I kind of felt like my quarter life crisis followed me across the pond and it wasn't as quick. I didn't know how to I honestly didn't know how to be happy. And so I actually ended up seeing a happiness coach and she really opened my eyes to the world of personal development and the fact that I didn't have to believe everything my mind was telling me because although I grew up with parents who were into personal development and I had studied psychology for 4 years, the way that she phrased things was completely life changing. And so I started to practice things like the law of attraction, even just gratitude was a big thing for me. And so I started to shift, the way I was thinking about it. But it definitely took time because there were, as you know, certain patterns that I was showing up with and behaviors I was participating in that didn't make it easy for things to transform until I started to get it for myself and things started to click.
What do you think was one of the phrases or the things she told you that created shifts for you internally?
I remember I had 6 sessions with her, and it was like a small fortune for me at the time, and I literally just cried throughout the sessions, and at one point, she interrupted me, and she's like, you don't have to believe your mind, right?" And I was like, "Oh, that's super interesting. I've never thought about it that way. I just, have all these thoughts going on a loop. Never thought that I had a choice to not believe what my mind was telling me or to think about it kind of like a program or operating system or playlist that I could adjust and change." And she also taught me about the law of attraction and that, when we start to think about the things that we actually want, it's obviously much easier to attract it into our life. And again, I had never been taught about that. And so I started, even one of the first things that I started to attract was to try and find the perfect partner. And so I wrote out a list of all the qualities I was looking for in somebody. And luckily, that wasn't a hard one for me because I had parents who had a beautiful relationship. And so I didn't have a belief system of like love doesn't exist. My belief system was quite the opposite, but I really started to focus on, okay, what do I want? And paying attention to that and starting to focus on the things that were going right in my life. And even the little things like starting a gratitude journal where I had a Tumblr blog for anyone listening who had a blog like that back in the day. I would write out my gratitude list every single day. And although that's super simple, it truly did change my life because I shifted from thinking about all the things that were going wrong or the things that hadn't happened yet or the clarity I didn't have into this is working, something, the things that I desire are on their way, or that person bought me a coffee or held the door open, things are working out for me. And that shift of my mind really transformed everything.
Yeah. The thing that is so powerful about gratitude is that our brain is still, there is this primitive part of it that is still being trained to run away from the saber-toothed tiger and look for danger, look for danger. That's why we love the news and everything's sensational. And every time we go into gratitude, we shift it into, oh, look for what's good, look for what's good. It's not our nature to look for what's good. So it needs to be premeditated, it needs to be intentional for us to be in gratitude.
Totally. Yeah. I think a lot of people think, well, I'm just naturally going to be grateful or I'm naturally going to be happy or I'm naturally going to be positive. And there are people out there who are like that. But for many of us, it takes that rewiring and being intentional, like you said, with a new way of thinking.
Yeah, so when you went there, you weren't as wealthy and successful as you are today. How did you work on your mindset to become who you are today?
Yeah, when I went to London, like I said, I didn't have a lot of money. I had to take out a student loan, and my student loan was in dollars. And so it was basically like cut in half because of the dollar was so weak at that time compared to the British pound. And so I didn't have a lot. Yeah, and I was only allowed to work a certain amount of hours as a nanny because I was on a student visa. And so I remember a point where my parents came to visit about a year into me being there, and I was just sitting on a bench outside of this church at High Street, Kensington, and my dad and I were chatting, and I was literally crying because I didn't have any money. And so he lent me some money, which was amazing. And it took a good few years for me to start to figure out what I even wanted to do as a career. Like I said, I got into a master's in nonfiction writing program. So I was writing a book, but alongside of that, I was actively exploring all these other different things that kind of were interesting to me. So, for example, I considered fashion journalism. So I took that class. I was also, luckily, I worked as an assistant for a consultant, a couple of consultants, and I didn't know that I would end up doing similar work to what they do, but it was a really great sort of segue into the world of small businesses. I also worked as a matchmaker for a bit. And so I started to kind of try on all these different businesses and roles to see what aligned with me and what I loved. But ultimately what ended up happening was as I got into the world of personal development and started to transform my life, I realized, you know what? I could do this for other women. And one of my best friends, she actually sent me Marie Forleo's B School website, which was fairly new at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, it hit me. This is something that I could do. And I, again, like I said, had recently discovered the world of personal development, started to transform my own life. I had these practices that really helped me. And so the idea for my brand, I Heart My Life, just came to me. It was September 2013, so about 3 years after I'd moved to London. And the intention behind it was just to help other women fall in love with themselves and their lives and figure out how to actually do that. And during that time, coaching was really starting to take off. And so my husband helped me build my first website. He took my first photos. Bear in mind, I was about $30,000 in credit card debt, $90,000 in student loan debt. Yeah, so over 100 grand in debt. So I didn't have money to start my business necessarily. And my husband lent me his credit card actually to be a part of the first program that helped me get things off the ground. And he was only making about 35 grand a year, and this program was $7,500. And so that was a big thing for us, but he believed in me and he could see how passionate about this I was. And so in 2014, I got my first client, made $442. But literally in the next 18 months, I built my business to seven figures. And yeah, so it happened very quickly. And because I, was kind of new in the coaching space and things started to take off as I was a part of this program, my coach started, promoting me basically and promoting me as her star student because things were happening. And so more and more people came to me, and it ended up turning more into business coaching because people were asking me how I was doing it. And so that was never, like I said, the intention behind the brand, but that was a lot of the work that I did for the next few years.
That's amazing. You said you had some rituals that you did at that time that really helped you. What were they?
The biggest thing for me is there was a period of time in the beginning of my business where I didn't know how to sell. And I kept getting on call after call and hearing no after no, and ultimately ended up with 54 no's in a row. So 54 people saying no to working with me. And I was like, okay, this is not working. And so I remember getting on one of the group calls with my coach and literally crying. I'm a very emotional person. And she coached me through how to have sales conversations, because what I realized is that I had a lot of my own money blocks and limiting beliefs that were holding me back. So, for example, whenever anyone said to me, "Oh, I'd love to work with you, but I can't afford it," I was like, "Okay, no problem. Thanks for your time. Bye." And that was kind of the end of the call. And so I realized I wasn't comfortable talking about money. And so that was something that I learned how to shift. The other piece was I went into conversations and calls believing people either didn't have the money, or when they told me they didn't have the money, I bought their story. And so one of the things that I talk to my clients about is really go into calls with an abundant frame of mind. And if you believe that everyone has the money for the thing that you're selling or the thing that they desire, that will change everything for you. And so I had a little like practice, and I still talk about it today. It's called my rich grandma method, because what I found is that people will find the money for the thing that they want. Maybe they have a rich grandma who's willing to lend it to them. Maybe it's a savings account. Maybe it's a 401k. Maybe it's a credit card that their husband or spouse lends them. But if they want something bad enough, they will find the money. And I just reflected on my own journey and realized that's what I did. On paper, it didn't look like I was the type of person to start a business or that I was going to be successful. We didn't have the money sitting in the account, but I made it happen. And so I shifted my mindset and went into the calls with that frame of mind instead. And if you think about it, everyone wants a coach who believes in them and believes that something's possible for them. And I realized that people were so much more appreciative that I believed that they had the money or they could find the money than when I said, okay, no problem. You don't have it. Let's just, speak in a year or whatever it is and send them on their merry way. Like they really loved the fact that I literally asked them, okay, so you don't think you have the money right now. Do you want to talk about finding the money? Do you want me to help you find the money? And so I started to say things like that and really go deeper with them in terms of their bank account, what they had, what they, gave themselves permission to use. I found that a lot of people had money sitting there, but they just weren't giving themselves permission to start their own business or to invest in themselves personally because of their own limiting beliefs. And so it was just super interesting to not only dive into my own money story, but then get the tools to support other people in their limiting beliefs around money. And that obviously supported me in creating more sales, working with incredible clients, and ultimately, building the business that I have today, because that was the foundational work that I teach, even 11 years later.
Yeah. What was your story about money?
Yeah, the biggest ones were that I wasn't allowed to talk about money. It was taboo. It was unchristian or ethical to want to have a lot of money, especially if you're helping people. You don't want to be greedy. I had a lot of people in my life think that I have expensive taste, and that was obviously frowned upon growing up religious and in a Catholic household. And so just a lot of shame around my own desires. And like I said, not being willing to talk about money, and also just a lack mindset mindset or a scarcity mindset. And when I shifted my thinking and believed that everyone has the money for what it is that they desire, or they can create the money, that changed everything for me as well as my clients.
Hmm. I I I worked with a woman who said that every time she had some money problems, she would go and she will book the most expensive hotel and have the most luxurious vacation, and then the money came as soon as she did that. So how do you think frequency wise we change this? Because there are the beliefs, right? Our limiting beliefs. Obviously, money doesn't grow on trees, etc., etc. But there are also the subconscious beliefs around money that are not surface level. How do you go into those and change those?
Yeah, so a lot of what I talk to my clients about is living as if, which is what your coach was talking about, living as if the money's there and getting on a different frequency. I like to support people with more micro upgrades. So for example, when I was starting to do this work, I would do little things that really helped me to see that I was on a different frequency with money, but also not spend all my money at once. So, for example, especially when I was living in London, I used to take the bus or the tube because it was cheaper. So at some point, I started to practice this micro upgrades work and take taxis. And, that extra 10 pounds or whatever it was, like obviously didn't break the bank, but it was enough to get me into a different frequency and start to have my system see that it's safe for me to live in this different way. Or buying yourself flowers, like whatever the little things are, or spending more time taking, like drawing yourself a beautiful bath, or yeah, when you take the flight, asking how much it is to upgrade to the first class ticket versus being an economy. Like all those little things really do add up and help shift you into a whole nother level. And again, like help you rewire your subconscious and your nervous system to see that it is safe for me to be the type of person who lives in this way. Because a lot of people, again, they're just so programmed to stay in the box and to do what they've always been told. And they have money beliefs and stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. And they're not even theirs, right? It's been adopted from their grandparents who maybe lived through the war and had a lot of scarcity in their life, or their parents who had a bankruptcy or something happen that then they pass down limiting beliefs around. And so you have to evaluate what's actually yours. And for a lot of my clients, it also starts with getting clear on their desires and what they really want for their life, and accepting that those desires are really truth. They're a map leading you to the life that you're meant to live. And so starting to shift, like I said, through those micro upgrades into that life right away versus waiting, 10 years from now when you have that big pot of money. There are little things we can all be doing every single day.
So what do you think comes first, the mindset or the action?
That's a good question. It's different for everyone. I mean, oftentimes, like, look, I appreciate the world of therapy, but sometimes you stay in this place, in this like circling of the story for way too long. And one of the fastest ways to get yourself out of your head, and again, to show your body and your nervous system that it's safe to do something, is to take that action. And so you're probably not going to feel 100% ready when you take the action. I remember even when I moved to London, I was questioning myself, and my grandpa said, "Well, you're never going to feel 100% ready. You just have to go and try it." And so it depends on the person and depends how deep those limiting beliefs are. And one of my clients back in the day, she said that her mom used to tell her, just effing do it. And so we came up with the phrase JFDI to help people just get out of their own way, because so often, again, we're in the story and we're processing all the stuff, but we don't actually take the action. So taking the action is a key piece of this.
So if somebody is listening right now and they want to change their money story forever, what are some of the first steps they need to take?
I do believe in having awareness around what your story actually is, because it's super eye opening for people. And especially to see that, hey, like this isn't actually my story. This is passed down from my parents or grandparents. And I can release that. I don't need to hold on to it. It's not serving me anymore. And really thinking about, how are you thinking differently to the people that you admire who are wealthy, who are successful? What is their mindset? There's an amazing book called How Rich People Think by Steve Seibold. And he literally went around the world and studied the wealth habits and the practices and the thought habits of the world's most wealthy self-made millionaires or billionaires, whoever it was. I think it was over 1,000 people he interviewed. And that's a really incredible book because he talks specifically about how people who are wealthy think differently to those who aren't. And so just really evaluating your belief system first and foremost. And then also getting clear on what are your actual desires? What is it that you want for your life? Because especially the women that I work with, they have big dreams, but still they're limiting themselves. They haven't allowed themselves to stretch into, what they currently deem as impossible or too big or too next level. And so really getting clear with yourself, what is the actual desire? And when I map out those desires and the life that I want, what amount of money does that take for me to achieve that? One of the things I realized early on is that money wants a purpose. And so in the beginning, as I was building out my coaching practice, I got really clear, like, this is my desires list. These are the normal expenses that I have. This is what my ideal life costs. And this is what I'm working towards. And then I broke it down into, okay, well, that's 10 clients or that's 15 clients or however many it is. So you can see that there's an actual pathway to the amount of money that you want to create in your life. So I'd start with those things. It's the uncovering your limiting beliefs, getting clear on your desires, and then what is your purpose for the money, and then that will lead to, okay, well, what action do I want to start taking towards that purpose?
Yeah, I like that you talk about action because it seems like, there was this movie, The Secret and the Law of Attraction, and a lot of people were thinking that, oh my goodness, I'm going to just meditate forever and everything's going to come my way. But we live in a world of action and we need to take action in order to achieve our goals. So when you coach a person, how do you, or your groups, you probably have groups or a club, I don't remember exactly what you got. How do you push them to take the action? Do you have like weekly assignments, monthly assignments?
Yeah, so my current product that I have is my membership. So it's a money mindset and wealth identity based membership. So basically, it walks them through my framework, which I call the Rich Life Method. And this essentially takes you from where you're currently at. For a lot of people, it's they're in survival. They're not aware that all these things are running the show. They're not aware that they're holding themselves back in this way. And they're in survival states. And so we move them from survival into awareness, which is what we're doing here today. We're uncovering the things that are holding us back into being more empowered, more abundant, and ultimately into the rich life that they're craving. And for a lot of women, again, this is the first time that they've done this work. And so, many of us weren't taught that we have a money story. And so that in itself is very eye opening. And so I really support them in observing, like I said, what those money beliefs are that are holding them back and keeping them from their next level life, and then moving them through the phases to ultimately get into the rich life that they want to create. And for me, it's not about, stopping there. I really want them to be in a state of overflow where things are easier. They're not in a place of burnout. They're not in a place of hustle, working every second. Like, there's definitely a time for that. And especially for entrepreneurs, there's a time where you're really building and creating and moving things forward. But ultimately, not coming from a place of survival and shifting into a more abundant frame of mind, not just in their business, but in all areas of life. And so we have a whole course and curriculum built around that framework. And then we have monthly calls. There's also a second track of that membership where they can go even faster and get one-to-one calls with myself as well as other coaches. So it's just it's a full process moving through them through different phases.
Maybe you can share a story of a client that really surprised you.
Yeah, even last week, I was on a call with a colleague and a client. She's both. And we got off the phone and she immediately texted me and she's like, oh my gosh, I just had my highest level client sign a contract for over 20K. It's her highest contract yet. And she's like, it happened right when we were on the phone. And she said, I know that all this work that you've been talking to, this work that we've been doing, what you've been teaching me about getting out of survival has been really helping me shift. And it was interesting because the person that she signed that day, she didn't even think in the beginning when they first met that she had the money because she was starting out and she didn't know, but she chose to believe that she had the money. If it was aligned, she was going to find the money, and she did. And this is somebody who she's been in business for a while and she's successful, but she had never done the mindset work and she'd never done the pieces that we've been talking about today. It just wasn't something that she grew up knowing about. And so it's really opened her eyes to like the small shifts that she can make in her belief system that have a huge impact on her clients, the people she draws into her life, the amount that she can charge, and her overall like happiness, because she's running multiple businesses, there's a lot of things going on. But this summer, she literally chose to raise her prices, change her packages, and trust that the right people would be on their way. And that's the other, piece of the equation, is really like holding that faith and that trust, and not going to a place where you're just going to take anyone who comes through the door, but really like holding firm and knowing like your work is valuable. You're deserving of this new price point. You're deserving of your champagne clients, and not letting any of the doubt, disbelief, or feeling like it's not happening slow you down and cause you to revert back to the old way of being.
So I also want to talk about things that might be lower in the frequency, like your family. Your family are in a different place than you are. You went out there, you went to London, you got your success and you made your peace with your money story. They didn't, and they watch you on the sideline. And did you ever have any conflict or felt like I don't fit in the family anymore because I'm a little bit, I think differently, bigger than life right now compared to them?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I do have family members who still are very uncomfortable with me talking so much about money, which is interesting. But I'm really clear on my purpose and the message that I'm here to share. And so that's the thing that I've really focused on. And, yeah, it's been hurtful. It's been challenging because a lot of times people aren't actually looking into what I'm really doing. Like, I'm not here just saying, oh yeah, let's make a ton of money. And, that's the only reason we're doing that. And that's fine if that's what people want to do. But like, I work with a lot of women who want to have big impact in the world, and their purpose for money is very heart centered, and it will change the world essentially. And so I see my work as having a lot of depth, but a lot of people on the surface see it as, oh, she's just talking about money. She just wants to help people have a rich life. She's just, whatever it is, overindulgent.
And even just that, what's wrong with that? Like, what's wrong? We all need to suffer together because this is how things are.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's just releasing that judgment, right? Like, we can all do so much better at that. Just let people do what they want to do in terms of their work. And so it's been, to answer your question, yeah, there have been challenging moments for sure. There's definitely people that don't understand, but I also know that the people that don't understand, they're not my ideal client. And so I don't need to try and cater to them. I don't need to try and speak so that they do understand. I need to stay true to myself and speak to the people who I do want to work with. And, for the most part, it's not that people don't love me and aren't supportive of me. It's just that they don't necessarily get it, but that's okay. Not everyone is going to get what it is that you do and what your purpose is. And I've definitely seen that in working with women, especially because sometimes even their spouse doesn't get what it is that they want to do. And so you really have to stay true to yourself and remember that you're the one being given the divine download. Your desires are truth, and only you know what you're meant for and what's possible for you.
Yeah, especially with spouses when it changes the dynamic in a relationship, and all of a sudden she's not a damsel in distress, but she's just like blooming into this powerful, successful woman. This is hard. It can be hard. So what do you do as far as self-soothing to handle rejection, or what do you teach your clients with handling rejection? Whether it's rejection of your purpose is too big, or even simple rejection in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think again, when we come back to the fact that our desires are truth, that for me changed everything. There's a quote I love by Raymond Hollywell. He's a spiritual teacher, and he talks about how your desires are essentially leading you to your fully expressed life. And your desires wouldn't be there unless they were possible for you and you had the tools to be able to bring them to life. And so I've really latched on to that as like my core belief, because things don't always happen in our perfect timeline. People don't always get it. Sometimes it feels like it's not happening. Sometimes we want to sign the client and it doesn't work, or like you said, our spouse doesn't get it or our family doesn't get it. And so you have to really hold your faith and know that what you desire is meant for you and possible for you. Otherwise, you literally would not feel it. It would not have come across your path. And so I really support my clients in knowing that, and also help them to have a community that supports them in making the thing that they're doing a reality, and regardless again of the timeline. And I think community, I'm an introvert, but from the get-go, I was a part of group programs, and that was game changing for me because I had people who were doing the same thing that I was doing and in a similar boat, in a similar chapter, and we were able to support one another. And I know, although my husband's always been super supportive, I know for the women that didn't have a spouse or partner that was supportive, that was life changing to have all of us there cheering them on. And so definitely like working on your mindset, working on your self-trust, knowing your desires are meant for you, and then finding your tribe of people that will continue to build you up and tell you to aim even higher, even when it feels like things aren't working or when the rest of your family or friends don't get what it is that you're trying to do.
Hmm. And how do you actually do it? Do you use affirmation? Do you use journaling? Do you use some kind of a morning ritual?
Honestly, it depends on the season that I'm in. Sometimes I do voice notes to myself. Back in the day when I was first doing this work, I used to lay in the shower for like 17 minutes and listen to this affirmation audio that I loved over and over and over. I also had post-it notes around my house with all of the new like money mantras that I was instilling, like all the new belief systems. So, for example, I'm a money magnet, or money flows effortless to me, or my ideal clients are on their way. I had a list of all the clients I wanted to bring in. So it was like numbered 1 through 20 or whatever it was. And then I would write their names as they came in. And so I was focused on tracking money, really paying attention to money, because money is just like another relationship. So if you think about your relationship with your spouse, if you didn't pay them attention or you didn't have connection, it wouldn't be a very healthy relationship. And it's the same thing with money. So I just got myself into this place where I built a new relationship with money. And ultimately, like I said, it's different with every single season. You know, I'm a mom now, I have a lot going on. I have two businesses. And so I'm not as intentional with that work, but I also am kind of like in more of a maintenance place versus, you know, when you start working out at the gym and it's much harder in the beginning. But I'll record affirmations for myself. I'll go on a walk and I'll just literally speak into my phone. Sometimes I use Chat GPT. I'll do journaling. I'll think about my desires on a regular basis. I take screenshots of different things that inspire me and I'll put them as screensavers on my phone. I'm in high vibe groups. And so, next level money, next level success is always a part of the conversation. And so, I think for people who aren't used to that, you need to normalize that type of conversation, because you essentially want to create a new normal for yourself. And so if you don't have the people in your life who are talking about big things, or like I said, building you up, it's very challenging. So just making sure that the conversations you're a part of are also high frequency, and that can be very powerful.
Yeah. How old is your daughter?
She's 2.5.
Ah, fresh.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have kids?
I have one. He's gonna be 6 in 2 days. We're
Oh,
planning a birthday
amazing.
party now.
Awesome. Love
So
it.
fun. Um, so how do you handle everything with like being a mom? And what shifted when you became a mom? I bet you could understand some of your clients a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so my husband and I have been married almost 13 years, and so we actually waited a long time to have kids, and that was intentional. And so I was somewhat of an older mom. I'm 39 now. And so yeah, I mean, everything changed. I know people always say that, but it did, in terms of, you know, my husband, it's sad to say, but my husband has said to me, you know, Charlotte, our daughter, can get you to put down your computer, put down your work way better than I ever could. And again, that's really sad for me to admit out loud, but like she's really changed my perspective and, you know, has opened my eyes to like wanting to have more time off, because I love my work. That's probably obvious. And I have a hard time switching off and putting down my computer and taking breaks, etc. I'm just that person. But she has really shifted that for me and helped me to just have a whole nother purpose, which has been really beautiful. And yeah, I mean, I don't know that we'll have time to get into this, but like the period of me being pregnant with her was crazy because we actually lost $250,000 during that time. And we had just purchased and built a brand new house. I took out multiple business loans because I wanted to grow the business in a different direction. And so we almost lost everything. And so we had to sell our house. We had to move back to my hometown. And so it's been a crazy 3 years. And yeah, but like she literally got us through it because, you can't not look at your child and think I was so grateful for her, right? Despite all of this stuff going on, she kind of brought us back to what was actually important.
You're so strong for handling all this. This is amazing.
Yeah, well, it's really, again, to come back to like the core of what we're talking about here, it really taught me that foundation I had with money mindset and belief in knowing what I meant for, like that was everything because that's what pulled me through. I was literally sued by American Express with a 6-week old baby in my arms. And I remember in that moment I was like, oh, that's not fun, but at the same time, like I'm going to get through this because I know what I'm meant for and this isn't going to hold me back. And so it's just been 3 years of rebuilding and getting back on track. And ultimately, I have an inner knowing that that's what was meant to happen for whatever reason. And now my vessel is much more expanded and nothing can really rattle me at this point. So I'm grateful to have gone through it. But yeah, it was definitely incredibly challenging.
Yeah, very challenging. What do you think about AI? A lot of people are afraid that they're gonna lose their everything, and I mean, the world is very, very intense. This year, last year, the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been everything is becoming faster and faster, and the change is really, really big. What do you think about that?
I mean, I'm grateful for AI because I use it every single day and it supported me in reaching more people, doing things like you said faster, and I know that can be seen as a negative thing in some aspects, but for me it's been really positive. And I think like with every generation, yes, ours is moving at the speed of light, but there's always been something that people are afraid of and worried about happening, and even things like the internet and whatever. And I think that I just refuse to go into fear regardless of what the conversation is about, whether it's about AI or anything else. Like I'm not going to go to a place of fear. I'm just going to trust that whatever is meant to happen for me, like I know that truth, and I'm going to figure out how to utilize AI in a way that helps me have even greater impact. So that's my current belief system. And I think, like I said, I apply that to everything, regardless of what the conversation is. Like, I'm just not going to a place of fear. How can I show up from a place of love and gratitude?
Hmm. So when you're near other moms, how do you handle that? Because not all moms are working moms. A lot of moms are stay-at-home moms. They don't care about the success or the limelight or working hard. How do you find that affecting you or not affecting you?
Um, I don't think it affects me, to be honest with you. Like my daughter is 2.5, and we're going to be homeschooling her. So we have a kind of a different scenario, but
No, we are homeschooling too.
really? Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to pick your brain. So I have a little bit of a different scenario, but I did grow up with a mom who was a stay-at-home mom, and I so appreciate having her at home. She had 4 kids, and it was a lot for her, and that was the right role for her. And so again, not everyone's going to understand why I do the things that I do, but they don't need to. And I just respect whatever path people have chosen for themselves. And I get it, having a daughter, there are days where I'm like, okay, well, do I really want to do this call or do I really want to do this thing? Like, I'd love to just spend time with her. And that's ultimately what I'm working towards as I'm rebuilding, is creating more freedom to be with her. And so I totally understand. And it's okay if people don't love what I do or don't get it. They don't have to. They're probably not my ideal client anyway, but I can still, show them love and have respect for them.
Hmm. Why do you think you want to be homeschooling?
The biggest thing is to be able to have control over the curriculum and what she's taught and be able to teach her things that are actually going to support her in the future versus just the stuff that's been reiterated over and over and over the last however many decades. So even things in the space of entrepreneurship, just stuff that's actually going to help her in the future. And I also don't believe that children need to be sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day. And I just don't think that's the healthiest way to have them experience childhood. And then the third reason is that we want to travel a lot. And so we desire, my husband's British, and so we desire to spend a lot of time in the UK and, really travel a bit more than what I did growing up, even though my parents were amazing at that, but just live in different places and experience different ways of doing life. And so I feel like we're going to be a bit more nomadic. So that'll make more sense for us.
It's amazing.
How about you?
Yeah, I resonate with everything you just said. I also feel like nobody's gonna take care of my child the way I do. And he's I mean the way he learns is different. Like if it's interesting to him, he will learn the big hard things right away, but skip the boring, tedious things that they teach. And so he learns in a different way, and he's really brilliant, and he learns so fast, like things I don't even teach him. He comes back and tell me, and I'm like, "Oh, how did you know that?"
Yeah, that's like my husband. He had to be really interested in something to be paying attention to it and learn it. And
Yeah, but yeah, I'm looking at him versus kids that are in school, and like I control there's no bullying in our environment. There is no kid that will corrupt him because I know who he's with. He feels more safe because he's close to us. I mean, it comes with its challenges. It's a commitment. But I am super happy and I'm proud of myself as a mom for doing it, and I'm proud of my husband, I'm proud of my son. So I think if you can do it, it's a marvelous choice.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I want to go back to building money identity. How do you build your identity as a wealthy person? Do you do meditation and you see your future self? Or because I heard you saying put in all the sticky notes and affirmations and walking and listening to yourself. Maybe you can share more about that.
For sure. Yeah. So within my community, we go through 5 different archetypes that are really centered around your survival self. And so we support people in shifting out of that. And so a lot of what I talked about today is definitely the method to do that. But I think one of the things that we haven't yet mentioned is to envision yourself as your next level self. And that really requires you uncovering what it is you actually want for your future chapters. And so for example, that could be something as simple as how are you dressing every single day? So I recently had a podcast interview with this woman who's a stylist, but she's also really big into manifestation. And so her big thing is to wear clothes that reflect your next level self. And I was honest with her and I said, you know what, that really triggered me when you said that because like I'm a mom, I'm running 2 businesses, like I do love clothes, but at the same time, do I have time to get dressed for my next level self every single day?
I
And
do
she
love my shorts and t-shirt, man.
I know, right?
I
Yeah,
like it
and
simple. Oh,
exactly, sometimes like that comfort. And she said, "You know what? I totally hear you, but you're getting dressed every single day, just try it." And so I'm not gonna sit here and say like I'm in full hair and makeup and dresses every single day. That's not true, but she challenged me to get rid of everything that wasn't aligned with my next level self. And so I ended up getting rid of over 100 pieces of clothes. And that was so powerful because it also reminded me, like I didn't go and replace everything right away, but it reminded me that there were things that I was hanging on to in my closet that were attached to my last chapter, and they weren't actually things that were reflective of where I wanted to go. And so, doing practices like that, like releasing that, or looking at your friend groups and seeing who's actually in alignment for me as I go to the next level. Who do I want to spend more time with or less time with? Things like that. Or even for me, One of the big ones is just tapping into the truth in the moment. So a lot of times people are making decisions from a place of fear without knowing it. So I'll literally ask myself, if I had $50 million in the bank right now, or if I was already at, the level that I want to be at, what decision would I be making today? From how would I be spending time with how would I be spending my time? Who would I be hiring? Would I be releasing this program right now? If I already had that money in the bank, would I be working with this client? Or would I say, no, absolutely not? And so just using that kind of questioning to help you tap into your most abundant self is very, very powerful. And then you're making decisions from a place of desire, not from fear.
And I guess in order to be surrounded with a higher caliber, you just have to take the courses, go to the workshops, go find where those people are and befriend them, which sounds so easy, but it's so not.
No, it's not. And I do think, like, there's, especially for those of us who are entrepreneurs and into personal developments. I mean, there's conferences, there's networking groups, there's lots of local opportunities in most cities. Even today, my husband sent me a link to a conference that's coming to Columbus. And, I'm in a fairly entrepreneurial place, but I'm no longer in LA or London or, New York. But there are opportunities all around. And then, of course, virtually. And like I said, I'm a total introvert, but my second business is called To Be Ambitious. It's a peer to peer community for female founders. And I started that when I was going through all my craziness of losing all that money, because I realized I spent nearly $600,000 on masterminds, coaches, retreats, networks, and events over the last 10 years. And I had this amazing network. And so I was like, I'm going to bring all these women together just to support one another. And that, like, again, that's me as an introvert doing that. But like, there's always opportunities for you to start your own group, if you don't see something out there that is aligned for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that in the past. Yes, I get what you're saying. Amazing. What are your three top tips to living a stellar life?
Number one, tap into what it is that you actually want for your life. Be honest with yourself, not somebody else's version, not, what your parents said that you should want, but what you actually desire for your life. Number two, really ask yourself, are my beliefs aligned with that vision? And if not, what can I do to start to shift? And then finally, take action. I'm in my last 30 or so days of my 30s. So I decided to take 30 bold action steps before I turned 40. And so
Amazing. What are they? Like, what is one of them?
the other day I started a Substack account and started writing again. Like, I'm a published author, but I decided to do this. Well, back in February, I wanted to do it and I just hadn't done it yet. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in and do this. Another one is that I'm pitching myself for this publication that I really want to be featured on and, share. And honestly, I'm just being intuitive with it as I go throughout my days and just seeing, like, where am I holding myself back? Where could I lean in? I invited somebody amazing to an event I'm hosting. And so just thinking about how I can stretch myself. I probably will see if I can do this. I don't like to use the word probably, cancel that. I desire to, yeah. I have this book idea. And so submitting a proposal to a publisher. So that's on the list as well. So anyway, a lot of them are business related. I'm sure there'll be some personal ones. My husband wants us to do a 24-hour fast. So that may be one as well. We'll see. But yeah, just
That's pretty easy, actually. It's not so hard, 24. You know, my husband did a 3-day fast, a 4-day fast, something crazy like that,
wow.
without water. No food, no water. I think 3 days.
The most I've done is 2 days, but I know 4 days is just like epic for you. So we'll see. But anyway, so yeah, challenge yourself to take that bold action as well.
Love it. Anything you want to share before we finish?
Yeah, so my website is iheartmylife.com. You'll see our membership. It's called the Rich Life Membership. That's on there. There's a free masterclass. We have an upgrade guide, so 77 micro upgrades that you can do to start stepping into abundance and living out your dream life. I have a podcast called the I Heart My Life Show, and you can find me on Instagram at Emily Williams.
Love it. Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. And remember to think about your desires and create a vision for yourself. And then see if that vision is actually aligned with your values. And after you've figured out all that, please take bold actions toward your dreams and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.